Welcome back to Take Action News, everybody. That music means it is time for our social media segment with Dr. Digipole on Twitter, Dr. Alan Rosenblatt. Alan, welcome to Take Action News. How you doing this weekend?
I'm doing well, David. How are you?
Great. Always great to see you on our Google Hangout. So, Alan, Twitter exploded this past week, and explain why.
Well, there are a few things that have been exploding, but the big one that really kind of has been going crazy, the president and the vice president launched a Twitter hashtag, now is the time, focusing on now is the time to do something about gun violence and gun control. And it's been very much active. Every second or so, there's somebody's tweeting on it. Arnie Duncan from the Education Department, Secretary, Vice President Biden, President, the White House itself, they've all been leading the charge with the tweets. There was earlier in the week, there was also a hashtag Twitter bomb pushed out from the left called Guns Over People, basically saying that GOP for the Republican Party now seems to stand for Guns Over People. That had a couple of days worth of very, very active tweeting, but it has seemed to have died down more recently. So those are the big things that are happening on the gun control side. There are a couple other interesting things that are going on. The Fix the Senate debate, your guest earlier today, the Fix the Senate hashtag associated with that campaign has been pretty strong. Not as strong as the others, of course, but it's been pretty steady because of the Senate Rules Committee voting on the rules Tuesday, I believe, which would determine, that's sort of the deadline for that. So there's been a big ramp up. There's been a lot of TV commercials associated with it. And one of the interesting things, and we're talking the inauguration, I've been looking at the tweets about the inauguration today, and they're, as you might imagine, a steady stream of them. But there's a subcurrent within the inauguration stream that I find particularly interesting, and that is the fact that the inauguration is occurring on Martin Luther King's holiday. And while many of the tweets are very positive, isn't this great, all this kind of stuff, there seems to be a pushback from conservatives that how dare the president hijack Martin Luther King for his inauguration, when in fact the Constitution basically says that the president is inaugurated on January 20th, and the only exceptions they make is if it's on a Sunday, which it was yesterday, that they do it the Monday after, which is why it's today. It's not the president's decision, it's the Constitution. And even more interesting, I see these tweets talking about how conservatives complaining that it's the ultimate of irony that the President Barack Obama, is being inaugurated on Martin Luther King holiday. And I just want to let the world know, no, it's the opposite of irony. They are not contradictory concepts. They are quite complementary.
Alan, one of the other big developments that we talked about earlier in the show is that the House Republicans, House Speaker John Boehner has now announced, and they announced it after their three-day conference in Williamsburg, Virginia, that the House Republicans are going to introduce legislation to extend the debt ceiling by 3 months,
right,
and allow the Senate to try to come up with a budget. What do you make of that, and how does that play out on social media?
Well, an interesting thing is that there's this like no budget, no play, which no budget, no pay, which of course reminds me of no woman, no cry, or something along those lines from Bob Marley. But the no budget, no pay seems to have two components to it. One is if the Senate doesn't pass a budget, then the House won't pass a long-term debt ceiling. In other words, they won't provide long-term capacity to pay our bills. But there's a subtext to it because Speaker Boehner also said that if the Senate doesn't pass a budget, he's going to work to make sure that senators don't get paid. Now, of course, in another sign of the breakdown and disarray and dysfunction of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives, I pointed it out, as did some of my colleagues, but then Representative Darrell Issa from California also pointed out that no, Speaker Boehner, that's unconstitutional. The 27th Amendment says that Congress may pass no laws affecting congressional salaries that take effect during the current Congress. They have to take effect after an election. So it's a very bells and whistle kind of idea, but it's simply unconstitutional, Speaker Boehner.